So just as bin Laden and his network would welcome a massive American assault, hardliners in the United States are doubtless quite happy about the opportunities that this offers them. It offers an opportunity to further regiment the society, to prevent dissidents, to ram through their agenda, militarization of more military spending, militarization of space, which is under the cover of missile defense, which is just a cover, further attacks on social democratic programs and welfare programs and so on. Right at this moment while we're talking, they're trying to use it as an opportunity to eliminate the capital gains tax and transfer wealth even more to very narrow sectors of the population. So of course there'll be all these efforts, and a crucial part of it is cutting back dissidents.
We were doing a lot of work on the right to protest before September the 11th. This was happening in Canada because we hosted the Summit of the Americas in Quebec City, and the government built a fence around most of the city, and we were able to organize academics, artists, even some journalists to defend the right to freedom of assembly, to the right to use public streets as a site of resistance. Post-September the 11th, it's a lot harder to mobilize that kind of mainstream support because people are so fearful. And when people are fearful, what the reflexive mode is to trust authority, right? To believe that you can trust the police, that you can trust your politicians. And it's fear is infantilizing. And an infantilizing process leads us to trust authority even against our better judgment.
You need an independent flow of information that you can trust, that has some accuracy, something other than simply government information. You need a historical and political context into which to put that information because random facts mean nothing to most people without some framework. And finally, you need the widest range of opinion that's circulating in the culture so that people have, in a sense, something to rub up against, somewhere to test their own ideas. And on all three of those things, I think the American media has failed, and I think failed miserably this time around.
Okay, but beyond the question of how, there's also the question we have to answer is the question of why. Why was this, what is it that drove these terrorists? Why did they do this? And again, I think the media has given a really superficial answer here. They haven't done a good job at all. The answer that's been given, for example, by Dan Rather when he appeared on the Letterman show, but by lots of other experts as well, is that they, the terrorists, hate our freedom and democracy. That's just a ridiculous answer. It's ridiculous because it doesn't tell us anything. It doesn't help us understand the situation the way that we need to understand it. And what we now have to do is we have to ask this question, the question of why, fearlessly.
My country was asked to supply forces to Iraq. The government nearly agreed, but the parliament absolutely refused. And the condition being sent back from every part of the world is, if we have to help in the rebuilding of Iraq, nobody wants to be there as an occupier of Iraq, but people do care about rebuilding Iraq. But the condition is that rebuilding of Iraq must happen under the United Nations, not under the US military. That is why the US is now turning to the United Nations, because they've created a mess. They're left with a mess. Their own military today is the target. The war is continuing in different ways, and somehow they need to stop it.
What the Pentagon wants us to believe is that the embedded reporter system used in the 2003 Iraq War was a change for them toward more openness. But it had nothing to do with openness. The Defense Department has no stake in a truly open media system in covering a war. It has a stake, as it always does, and as all armies have, a stake in control. The method by which it controls journalists changes. And that's what I think we have to learn, is that powerful institutions change the way they use reporters. They change the way they control the flow of media. But they don't change their central goal, which is to always remain, as much as possible, in control.
The United States has also been arguing for more time after the war. We need more time, we will find the weapons. This was the same kind of thing that Hans Blix and Mohammed Abardai were saying in March. They were saying that we haven't found everything we want, but we think with more Iraqi cooperation and with more time, we can give you a much more definitive assessment of what is or is not happening.
In moments of trauma or moments of difficulty, on a lot of occasions, legislation was passed, action was taken by the federal government, which just undermined the constitutional rights of people. And we know that from our own history, from the Civil War through the 1960s, through Watergate, as a matter of fact.
We have never been a nation where we've said to our government officials, we trust you, do what you want to do. We have a system of checks and balances. And with the governments now trying to pass rules and regulations, taking away judicial authority from the judges in reviewing decisions from the executive branch, we are significantly eroding our rights in making sure that there are checks and balances on what happens within each government agency.